If you have a true, strange, or scary story you want to share with the channel, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. This happened back whenever I was in my early 20s, in 2010. I was a dumb kid doing dumb things, and there was one time when I was driving to my girlfriend's place, for reasons, that something happened that was seriously terrifying. Like, potentially life-threatening levels of terrifying. My girlfriend lived in the town over, so I had to take the highway to her place. About a 15-minute drive on a good day. On this specific day, I had made plans to head over to her place, not even thinking about the fact that we were supposed to get a decent storm when I was going to be leaving. It was one of those storms that you knew was going to hit based on how dark the clouds were off on the horizon, and I was going to be heading straight into it. It started fine, with just a light drizzle, but within minutes, it pretty much turned into a torrential downpour. That wouldn't be an issue for normal people, but my windshield wipers were barely functional. There was something wrong with the wiper motor, and they would move really slow, or sometimes they would go up and just get stuck. And then I would have to reach out to push them back down. I was pretty pissed off at myself. I'd had the money to get it fixed, and I'd had the time, but for some dumb reason I just didn't. Probably laziness. I spotted a bridge a bit up the way, and I decided that I would pull over onto the shoulder. I'd be out of the worst of the rain, and I could wait it out for a bit. My old car rattled as I steered it off the road and parked just beneath the overpass. The windshield was finally clear of rain, but the whole car was shaking slightly from the wind and the roar of passing traffic. I sat there for a bit, just listening to the rain falling, trying to get a text out to my girlfriend to let her know that I would be a bit late. The storm looked like it was going to stay for a little while, and I started debating whether or not I should give it a second go. When out of nowhere, bang. The sound was so loud and sudden that I jumped in my seat. For a second, I thought lightning had struck nearby, but this noise was different. Closer. More like metal hitting metal. My heart was pounding and I looked around, trying to figure out what had just happened. A car had passed me just as the noise went off, and my first thought was maybe they'd blown a tire. The sound had that kind of punch to it. I turned off the car and opened my door to step out, thinking I would see the car pull over with a flat a little ways down the road or something. But there wasn't anything out of place, or anyone else pulling over. Then I turned back to my car and saw it. Right there, on the lower part of my door, was a small, clean hole. It was a bullet hole. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at it. My brain was struggling to process what I was looking at. A bullet? Someone had fired a gun and it had hit my car. It was small, just about the size of a dime, but it was deep. The metal around it was dented. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. If the bullet had gone through the door, it would have gone right into my leg. My ankle, to be exact. I stood up, and I scanned the highway looking for... what? The shooter? Another car pulled over? I really didn't know. It was just rain and blurry headlights zooming by. Nothing out of the ordinary. I scrambled back into my car, slamming the door shut. My mind was racing. Was someone out there taking random shots at cars in the storm? Was it just an accident? A stray bullet from somewhere else? I had no idea, but I knew I needed to call 911. The dispatcher kept me on the line while I waited for the police to arrive. I tried to explain what happened, but Even as I was saying it out loud, it felt unreal. I was just sitting here, waiting for the storm to pass, and a bullet hit my car, I told her. She was calm, probably more calm than I was, and assured me that someone was on the way. I waited for the officers, and when they finally pulled up with their lights on, a tall guy with a calm demeanor knocked on my window and asked if I was okay. I nodded and told him that I personally wasn't hit, but he could very well see the hole in my door. We talked about it for a while. He told me that I was lucky the round didn't go all the way through, by literally just some miracle. There really wasn't any reason for it to not have done so. It was just luck, I guess. Another officer drove around, checked the area, and looked for literally anything. There weren't any clues for what exactly happened, but they took my info and told me that they were just glad I wasn't hit. They ended up driving off, and I sat there for a few more moments, thinking about life and how fragile it can be. Poetic, I know, but if whoever had pulled that trigger had been aiming higher, that round very well could have just gone through my window, my chest, or my neck, and made those moments my last. I have an experience that is somewhat recent. Just a couple of months ago, actually, that I wanted to share because it was seriously chilling for me. I'm an avid runner, and I do my best to not let anything get in the way of my routine, and that includes the weather. On this particular evening, it was pretty cloudy, but I was well and determined to get my run in, even if it was going to rain a little. That was a pretty stupid decision on this night, because I didn't check the forecast, so that little bit of rain ended up being a torrential downpour. I was running on my path, which was paved, but it was in a mostly undisturbed wooded area. As I was making my way down the path, it started coming down in sheets. I tried to run through it as long as I could, but then it started hailing, and that was pretty much the end of it for me. I hopped off the path and into the tree line using the trees as coverage as best as I could. I didn't have my umbrella because, again, I was very ill prepared. I figured that I would be able to just stay there for a while and wait out the storm. It had to end eventually, right? If not, I would stay there until I hit my mental limits and then make a mad dash to the parking lot to get into my car. Well, the latter ended up happening. It wasn't letting up or slowing down at all, so I just took a deep breath and took off back toward the parking lot at a full sprint. I practically jumped in my car, sopping wet, breathing heavily and my teeth chattering, just watching the rain smack the hell out of my windshield. I decided I would sit there for a little bit, again trying to see if the storm would let up some, or if I was going to have to drive home in the pouring rain. It was definitely a bit of a downer, but I thought that, whatever, I would just enjoy the sound of the storm, and then get out of there when it slowed. I leaned back in my seat and tried to get comfortable. Every few seconds, a flash lit up the area, and yes, I know it's probably not a good idea to be in the car in the woods during a storm, but it honestly felt safer than being out in the rain. As I sat there for a few minutes, I was watching the tree lines, and I thought I saw movement. At first, I assumed it was a deer or something, but I looked again and saw that it was taller than a deer and looked more like a person. My mind immediately went to, there's some poor sap out on the trail still running through the rain. And then I thought, damn, they were more committed than I was. But the way they were moving looked odd. They weren't really going in one direction. They were seemingly walking aimlessly around the trees. I watched this person for several moments just thinking, are they okay? Do they need help? Should I do something? After a couple more seconds, I decided to turn on my headlights to get a better look at whatever it was this person was doing, since it was getting later and was starting to get dark. I flicked my headlights on, and they illuminated the entire area in front of me. The trees, the path, and the figure. When they kicked on, the person turned to look in my direction, and it became immediately apparent that whatever the hell I was looking at was not a person. Or at least it was not a normal person. It's hard to figure out how to state what I was looking at, other than it was a person, sort of. They were dressed, but they weren't dressed for the weather. The person, whom I'm assuming was feminine, was wearing a white dress that looked older. Her skin was pale and it looked a bit dirty, but it wasn't until I saw her face that things got really freaky. Mostly because she didn't have one. Whatever this was, it didn't have a face. It was just flat, pale skin. I know it sounds weird, but I think the best and currently relevant way to describe it is like the nurses in Silent Hill, but without the scar. It was just flat. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. This was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen in my entire life. Not just because of what it was, but also the fact that whatever this was out in this storm in the woods. I don't know if it was something paranormal or what, but it scared the living hell out of me. I immediately started my car and took off out of the parking lot and away from the park. I half expected that thing to be chasing my car like some kind of horror movie, but it wasn't, and I didn't see it after I left. I have been back to that park numerous times, a couple of times at night, even, to see if I could find this thing again, but I've yet to see anything like it, nor have I read any local posts about it. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the only person to have seen this thing, and it was just the one time. If anyone has any ideas what this thing could have been, I'm open to thoughts, but as of right now, I have no clue. It was some kind of freaky thing in the woods, and I'm just going to pretend that it was a ghost or something because thinking that there's something that is of this world that's out there in that form is too much for me. I wanted to send in a story that most probably won't find creepy, and maybe there's some kind of logical explanation, but for me, at the time, it was really strange. Maybe that's more what this story would be. A strange story instead of a scary one. I don't know. I'll let you decide how to use it, if you choose to. This happened back in the summer when I was 11 years old. I don't remember much about the summer, honestly, but I do remember this specific day. It was summer break. I was at home, an only child, and both of my parents worked, so I spent a lot of time by myself. This was one of those days where I was home alone doing whatever I did at the age of 11. It was hot, but I also remember that it was really rainy. Like we were getting hit with a crazy storm. I wasn't able to go outside to do anything because of how much it was coming down, and the street was starting to basically become a small stream. After about half an hour of the rain coming down, it started getting really windy, and at one point the power went out. I was pretty upset about that, because I was playing Pokemon Stadium on my N64, and I was in the middle of one of the cup tournaments, and then the power went out. If I were any more angsty, I probably would have thrown my controller in a rage, but I also didn't want to break my stuff, so I just put it down and yelled at the now dark TV. I went downstairs and decided to just sit on the couch and do nothing until we got the power back, because I wasn't sure what else I could do. I sat there and watched the rain come down, thinking about how quiet it was, when out of nowhere I heard a familiar tune. It was the tone that came from an ice cream truck. I guess I should mention a couple of things about my neighborhood. I lived on a cul-de-sac, so one way in and one way out. We did have an ice cream truck that came through, but they usually came through on Tuesdays and Fridays, and I don't believe that this was either of those. On top of that, the truck that did come through would come through at 3 in the afternoon. They never came through earlier in the day. I know it seems weird that I knew the exact time, but I remember weird things like that. That's just how I've always been. At first I thought I was imagining it. There was no way that an ice cream truck was riding around in the rain like that, but as it was getting close, it was getting louder, so it was definitely real. But again, in the middle of a massive thunderstorm, no one is going to be running out to get their ice cream. I wiped the condensation off the window just to watch as this colorful van drove down the road and around part of the cul-de-sac. I watched as it kept going, the tires sloshing through the collecting water, and the headlights barely visible. But sure enough, the van was covered in colorful decals, with various ice cream treats plastered all over it. I remember feeling really strange as I watched the van pull around, and then just kind of stop. It pulled just past my house in the middle of the circle, and it stopped. I sat there and watched the van sitting there on the road, the music continuing to play at max volume. It was kind of unsettling. The background of the thunderstorm with this van just sitting there, motionless, and chiming out whatever soulless kid tune it was playing. No one got out of the truck. No one walked out of any of the houses toward the van or anything. There was no one outside anywhere. Just this van sitting on the street, headlights shining, windshield wipers going, and music playing. Now, logically, one could assume that this van was maybe just pulling over to wait out the worst of the storm. And that would make sense, right? But then why would he, 1, drive in the storm for several minutes to come down this specific cul-de-sac, and then why would he park there and keep the music playing? Normally, the van would play the music while he approached, and then it would be off when he stopped. But this guy didn't turn it off. It just kept playing, over and over, on a loop, for an hour. At least an hour. I watched this truck over the time, glancing over every few moments to see if he moved or anyone got out, but no. This guy seriously just stopped and was taunting 11-year-old me with this annoying, slightly distorted song. Obviously, I don't think it was actually about me, but who knows, right? I wasn't able to think about anything but the dumb song. It was super distracting and super loud. At one point, I thought about going outside to see if maybe the guy needed help or something, but I didn't. I was way too shy to do something like that. After that hour or so, the van slowly crept away from where it was parked, and then left. As suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. It was super slow as it rolled down the road, like 5 miles per hour, and the music kept going as it left the area. I watched it turn to the right and go out of view. I have no idea what the hell this was. And like I said, a lot of people may not think that this was scary, but I cannot think of any reason for this guy to have just sat there for that long with the music going like that. Like maybe he was waiting for someone in the neighborhood, but then why wait for a full hour like that? Why keep the music going? And plus, no one came out. No one exited the van. The whole waiting out the storm thing kind of makes sense, minus the fact that the storm was still going when he left. And again, the music. Maybe he was being a nuisance. Sure, that makes sense, but then again, why? I just don't know. Worse yet, I never saw that ice cream van again for the rest of the summer. Or honestly, ever. We had our regular one that came back the next week, but that specific one never returned. I told my mom about it when she got home, and her only explanation was that maybe he didn't know the music was on. Which I cannot personally believe, with how loud and obnoxious it was. Looking back, it was very strange. And for some paranoid reason, part of me tells me that he wasn't there to sell ice cream. What he was there for, however, I will likely never know. When I was around 9, I had this stuffed penguin. It wasn't one of those cute, soft, and fluffy ones you see everywhere, no. This thing was almost as tall as I was at the time. This thing was big, over 3 feet tall, with glossy black eyes, and a strange, almost rigid body. My uncle had given it to me for my birthday a couple of years prior, and I remember the minute that I saw it, I hated it. There was something off about it. Something that made me feel uneasy. Like it was watching me when I wasn't paying attention. I loved my uncle. He was a great guy, and he meant well, but I have no idea why he bought that thing. I was polite about it, and he was excited to see me with this giant stuffed bird, so I smiled and said thanks. It ended up in my room, of course, perched in the corner near my bed, and as much as I tried to ignore it, I would lie there every night convinced that it was watching me. Eventually, I asked my mom if we could move it somewhere else in the house, and she finally agreed, saying that we could move it into the spare bedroom, which was right across the hall from my room. It was far enough, though, and I was just happy that it was out of my room whatsoever. That's the setup to the story. I promise, it is going somewhere. It was a year later, when I was 10, and I had my friend Evan staying the night. It was late summer and a big storm had rolled in. It was a cooler night though, so my mom wanted to keep the windows cracked in the living room so we wouldn't have to run the AC. It was one of those summer storms where everything was going crazy. The wind was hitting the house, the trees were smacking the windows. Basically, it was going to be one of those nights where Evan and I tried to scare the crap out of each other. We were telling each other creepy ghost stories in my room after everyone had gone to bed, just trying to make up anything and everything we could that would be scary, which wasn't much since we were 10 years old. I had just finished telling a story that I made up or read about in a book or something about a clown that would watch kids sleep through the window, when out of nowhere, Evan asked me if I still had that creepy, giant penguin thing. Evan, being my best friend, knew that thing scared the hell out of me, so of course he would bring it up. I hadn't thought about it in a while, but the second he mentioned it, I started thinking about it again, and I got that chill down my spine. I tried to sound calm and say, "Oh, yeah, it's in the spare room now. I didn't want it in my room anymore." Evan then said, "We should go check it out." I immediately tried to say no, that I wasn't supposed to leave my room after bedtime like that, which was a total lie, and I'm sure Evan knew it. But Evan kept pushing me, saying that I was a baby, and that I was letting a stuffed penguin scare me. I relented because I wasn't going to let him think that. I grabbed my flashlight, and we opened my door and slightly down the hall to go to the door to the spare bedroom. I stood there for a moment just thinking about that stupid penguin. Evan pushed in front of me and grabbed the door, pushing it open for me, basically giving me no alternative. I stepped into the room behind him and shined the flashlight back and forth, looking for the penguin. Of course, it was there, in the corner, just lying there face down on the spare bed. Evan laughed at me, saying that it was a stupid thing that I was so scared of a stuffed penguin. I gave a slight chuckle and agreed with him, just saying, yeah, it's just a dumb toy. This is where things went weird. When I said that, I swear to you that the room dropped a solid 10 degrees. It went from slightly cooler to freezing in there in an instant. I turned back toward Evan to ask if he was cold too, and the door behind him started creaking and then shut hard, like someone had pushed it. It wasn't me. I was standing there staring at Evan, and I knew it wasn't him because I was literally looking right at him. I stared at the door with my mouth slightly open, just freaking out, when Evan hit me on the shoulder and told me to look, pointing in the direction of the bed. When I turned that way and shined the light on the bed, I saw the penguin. Only this time, it wasn't lying flat. It was standing up and leaning against the back corner of the bed. That was more than enough for me. I ran from where I was standing to the door and yanked it open, running as fast as I could across the hallway back to my bedroom. Evan yelled out for me to not leave him there and stumbled out of the room towards mine. When we got back to my room, I flicked on the light and was surprised to see that Evan actually had tears on his face. I asked if he was okay, and he told me that he was fine, and then wiped them away, and asked what was wrong with that stupid penguin. I said that I hated that damn thing, that it was always creepy to me, and I hated having it in my room, and that's why it was over in there. And now I had even more reason to hate it. It was such a quick event, but it was probably the most terrifying thing I had ever experienced as a child. Neither of us spoke about it after that, and I didn't go back into that spare bedroom at all. Like, ever. My mom still lives in that house, and to this day, I still refuse to go in there, even though that penguin is long gone. I personally think that the penguin was cursed, or haunted, or had something attached to it. I don't know. That was the only time I ever had a paranormal experience, and it didn't start until I called the thing stupid. I actually asked my uncle where he got it, but he honestly could not remember. He knew that he didn't buy it from a big store or anything, but he couldn't recall where exactly it had come from. I don't know, and now I don't really care. I'm just glad that I never had a run-in with whatever it was that was attached to that stupid penguin ever again. So that, my friends, was a collection of some scary rainy day stories. Just stories where the scariness happens on a rainy day. 3 of these involved motor vehicles. Don't know if you noticed that. I did. Apparently motor vehicles and rain go together in the creepiness. One of them was, actually driving. The other one was the truck, and the other person was in the woods, and they turned on their car and saw the weird faceless thing, which was terrifying to think of. That definitely felt paranormal, right? Like, that wasn't a person or a cryptid. That was a ghost, right? In the woods. I don't know. Creepy. And there's the ice cream truck. That would bother me too. Just sitting there listening to that stupid song for an hour. Oh my god, I'd lose my mind. 11-year-old me would probably... I don't know what I would have done. Put on headphones. Put a CD in my little red Sony CD player with the anti-skip that didn't work. And just listen to music for the hour. Yeah, just... Anyways, scary stories where rain was involved. Not necessarily in the rainstorm, but rain was involved in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, I think they were good. Hopefully, you think that same thing. If you do, please consider hitting that like button. That'd be fantastic. I would appreciate that more than you know. And if you're feeling bold, You can leave a comment down below the video, letting me know your thoughts, what you thought of the stories, of me, personally, if you want to do so. You can also subscribe to the channel. I forgot that one at first. If you liked what you heard and want more. You can join Patreon and memberships to get early access to content like this. Check out the coffee link, KOFI, down in the description to check out the posters that are for sale. You can also listen to the podcast on Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that podcasts are listenable. You can have a beautiful day. How about that? I want you to have a beautiful day. Have a great day. Have a fantastic day for me, please. I implore you to have a fantastic day. I request humbly that you have a fantastic day. Anyways, all that said, friends, hope I see you again here very soon, but until then, remember that you are loved, that you are valid, that you are very important. Do not forget it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love. Sleep well.